Hello, horror listeners. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for the channel. Also, make sure to tell us in the comments how you like the story and from where you are watching or listening. If you want to hear any specific story, feel free to request it. Now let's begin the story. I never thought of myself as the kind of person who scares easy. Growing up in Ohio, I'd been through my share of tough jobs, stacking lumber in freezing winters, working fryers in grease-stained diners, hauling furniture up 3 flights of stairs for cash under the table. Life had already taught me that people could be scarier than anything you read in ghost stories. But this one job, the one I took just to scrape together enough to keep myself from drowning, stayed with me. Not because of lousy pay or long hours, but because of what happened during those nights. It was the spring of 2017. I was 26, freshly broke from a breakup that had gutted me like a fish. My girlfriend of 3 years, Leah, had left with half the furniture and more than half my savings. I didn't blame her entirely. Things had been falling apart long before the final argument, but the fallout left me with nowhere to live and nothing to fall back on. Through a guy I met in a Facebook group, I found a cheap room to rent in Pine Grove, Pennsylvania, a nothing kind of town. 2 stoplights, a post office, a diner that closed at 9, and more boarded up shops than working ones. I ended up renting a room above a muffler repair shop. The guy who ran the garage, Hank, barely spoke more than a grunt when he handed me the keys. The room smelled like oil and mildew, but it was $275 a month, utilities included. It was either that or sleeping in my car. I needed quick money. That's how I found myself behind the counter at Pine Grove Market, a little convenience store wedged between an abandoned laundromat and a liquor shop with flickering neon. The owner, Mr. Wallace, was in his late 50s with permanent coffee breath and the kind of tired eyes that made it clear he'd given up on anything but keeping the lights on. You do your job, don't steal from the till, and keep the weirdos out. That's all I ask, he told me during the interview. The shifts were from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. Not exactly glamorous, but I figured, how bad could it be? Quiet nights, a paycheck, and a little peace to get my head straight. At first, it was easy. Most of the customers after midnight were either truckers passing through or regulars looking for cigarettes and cheap beer. I brought a notebook with me and started scribbling down half-baked ideas for stories just to pass the time. The buzzing of the coolers was white noise. The smell of old mop water became background. But Pine Grove wasn't the kind of town you could ignore forever. It was my 3rd week on the job when things got strange. The store was dead quiet. The clock had just slipped past midnight. I was leaning on the counter scrolling through my phone when the bell over the door jingled. I jumped, more from the sudden sound than anything else. A man walked in. He was tall, at least 6'2", with broad shoulders under a heavy coat zipped all the way to his neck. This wouldn't have been strange except it was late April, unseasonably warm that night. But what froze me wasn't the coat, it was the mask. Not a cheap Halloween mask, but an old-fashioned rubber clown mask. Pale face, exaggerated grin, hollow black eyes. The kind you'd expect to find in a dusty attic trunk, not on a stranger in a gas station market at midnight. Evening, I said, my voice cracking more than I wanted. He didn't answer, didn't move, just stood about 20 feet inside the door, breathing softly through the rubber. "You okay, buddy?" I asked, trying to play it casual. "Little early for Halloween, huh?" Nothing. Just the faint squeak of his breath behind the mask. The coolers buzzed louder than normal. I could hear my pulse in my ears. Finally, after what felt like an entire minute of silence, he turned, slowly, and walked down the nearest aisle. He didn't touch anything, didn't even glance at the shelves. Then just as quietly, he walked out the door. The bell jingled again, and he was gone. I stood frozen for a good 30 seconds before moving. My throat was dry and my palms were slick. I looked out the window, but the street was empty. Maybe it was just some local trying to screw with me. Small-town boredom, right? But something in my gut told me it wasn't just a joke. Tuesday passed normally until closing. I locked the door at exactly 3 a.m., flipped the sign to closed, and stepped out into the night air. My car was parked in the gravel lot behind the store. As I walked toward it, I noticed movement under a flickering street lamp about half a block down. The man in the clown mask. This time he didn't stop. He didn't even look at me, just walked, steady and deliberate, disappearing into the shadows beyond the diner. I drove home faster than I'd like to admit, double-checking the locks on my apartment door until I almost broke the knob. Wednesday. By then, I was half expecting him. Every time the bell jingled, my chest tightened. But the hours dragged by without incident. No mask, no strangers, nothing. At 3 a.m., I locked the store and walked to my car, trying to convince myself it had all been in my head. Then I saw it. On the driver's seat, sitting upright like a passenger waiting for me, was the clown mask. My body went cold. I froze, staring at it through the glass. I yanked the door open, half expecting him to leap from the back seat. Nothing. Just that mask smiling at me. I whispered, "What the fuck?" over and over, hands shaking as I picked it up and flung it onto the gravel. That night I slept with a crowbar next to the bed. Days passed. Nothing happened. I started to think maybe it was over, some prank that had run its course. Then Saturday came. Around 1 a.m., a man came in wearing a dark hoodie pulled low. Something about his walk made me uneasy. He wandered the aisles too long, picking things up and putting them back. When he passed by the counter, he finally glanced up. I recognized his eyes, the same ones I'd seen through the clown mask. He gave me the faintest smile, polite but wrong, threat disguised as kindness. Then he left without buying anything. I checked the store's old cameras the next morning. Sure enough, there he was, hoodie guy, clear face. But when I went outside to leave that night, there was a sticky note on my windshield. "See you soon, night owl." The cops brushed me off. "No crime's been committed," they said. "Probably just some idiot messing with you." But I knew it wasn't over. For weeks, I parked in different spots, checked my car with a flashlight before getting in, carried the crowbar in my backpack. Nothing happened. Until one stormy night in May, the power went out around 1 a.m. The store fell into silence. The emergency strips along the floor glowed faint red. Then the door chime rang. I swung my flashlight toward the entrance. No one. Just the door slowly swinging shut. "Hello?" My voice cracked. I walked the aisles one by one. Empty. But when I looked up at the convex mirror above the back wall, I froze. In the fisheye reflection, standing behind me near the cooler, was a flash of white and red. I spun around. Nothing. But when I got back to the counter, my stomach dropped. The clown mask was lying there. On the counter, and on the black and white security monitor, frozen in the corner of the frame, was a man standing perfectly still in the cooler aisle, staring at the camera. That was my last night. I quit the next morning, packed up my things from the garage room and left Pine Grove without looking back. I never saw him again. Not in person, not in my rearview mirror. But even now, 6 years later, I still check my car every time I get in. And I never laugh when I see someone in a mask. Because some people, they're not trying to be funny. Story 2. I never thought my life would be shaped by exhaustion. Not the usual kind where you crash on the couch after a long day, but the kind of bone-deep fatigue that seeps into your thoughts, your bones, even your dreams. That was my life in the winter of 2022. My name's Ethan Ward, and at that time I was 28 years old, living alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment in Fairview, Connecticut. Fairview wasn't much. Quiet, suburban, tucked between strip malls and old neighborhoods. Rent was just barely manageable, but only because I was working 2 jobs. By day, I handled printing orders at a small family-owned copy shop on Main Street. Nothing glamorous, laminated menus, business cards, school projects. By night, I logged into a remote customer service position for a mid-size retailer called Ridgeway Supply. That one paid better, but the hours were brutal. My shift ran from 8 p.m. to midnight, and the constant monotony of complaints and return policies chipped away at me. I needed both jobs to stay afloat. Inflation, car payments, groceries, it all stacked up, and I wasn't about to let myself fall behind. But even now, when I think back, I wonder if the exhaustion blinded me, if being so worn down made me less cautious, more willing to dismiss things I shouldn't have. My apartment was on the second floor of an older complex called Maple Grove Apartments. It wasn't fancy. Thin walls, creaky stairs, heating that barely worked in the winter. I had turned the corner of my living room into a makeshift office. Desk, computer, headset, lamp. The glow of the monitor was the only light most nights. It became a strange little ritual. I'd come home from the print shop around 6:30, grab something quick for dinner, then set up for the night shift. Most calls were dull. "Where's my order?" "The size doesn't fit. How do I return this?" "Your website charged me twice." You could almost predict them before the customer spoke. Still, it paid enough that I kept going. But there was one Thursday night in March, a cold, rainy one, that burned itself into my memory. That was the night the monotony broke. Around 10:20 p.m., I hadn't had a call in nearly half an hour. That wasn't unusual. There was always a lull late in the shift. I leaned back in my chair, hoodie zipped up tight against the draft coming from the window. I was half listening to a podcast playing quietly from my phone when my headset beeped. "Thank you for calling Ridgeway Supply. This is Ethan. How can I help you tonight?" At first I heard nothing, just static. I tried again, a little sharper. "Hello? Can you hear me?" Then finally a voice. A man's. Low, raspy, with an edge I couldn't quite place. "I can see you." I frowned, certain I misheard. "Excuse me? Can you repeat that?" The voice chuckled softly. "I said, I'm outside your window." I froze. My chair squeaked as I sat up straight. My eyes darted toward the blinds, closed, but with tiny slivers of space between them. The only light in the room was my monitor's faint glow. From the outside, it would have been hard to see anything clearly. "Sir, this is a customer support line," I said, forcing a chuckle. "If this is some kind of prank, I'm going to disconnect the call. You're wearing a dark gray hoodie, am I right?" My heart stopped. I looked down. Sure enough, gray hoodie. The one I'd been wearing since I got home. My throat tightened. "Who is this?" The laugh came again, drawn out, deliberate. "Why don't you open the door and find out?" Then, click. The line went dead. I sat motionless for a full minute. My first thought was rational. A prank. Some scammer spoofing the call line. Maybe even someone who hacked into the system. But then the specifics, the hoodie, the window, it gnawed at me. Finally, I stood and crept to the front door. The hallway was dark. I hadn't turned on the overhead light. Slowly, I pressed my eye to the peephole. Nothing. Just the still, empty hallway. Then, knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp raps right on the other side of the door. I stumbled back, my chest tight. My phone vibrated on the desk behind me. Another incoming call. Same masked number. I answered but didn't speak. The voice was clearer this time, almost amused. "Why didn't you open the door, Ethan?" "My name." He knew my name. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "You seemed brave earlier, but not brave enough." Click. The line went dead again. I didn't hesitate this time. I grabbed my cell and dialed Fairview PD. My voice shook as I explained everything. The calls, the knocking, the voice knowing my name and clothes. "Stay inside," the dispatcher told me firmly. "We've got a unit on the way. Keep the line open with me until they arrive." I locked the door fully, bolted the chain, and sat in the dark corner of the room, every muscle wired tight. Minutes stretched. 5, 10. My headset beeped again. Same mask number. Against every instinct, I answered. This time only breathing. Long, shallow, ragged breaths. Then the words, "I see the police." The call ended. Seconds later, loud banging rattled my door. "Fairview Police!" I nearly collapsed with relief. I opened the door to find 2 uniformed officers. One stepped in, hand on his flashlight, while the other stayed near the stairwell. I told them everything again, voice trembling. The officer searched the hall, then checked the grounds outside my building. Wet pavement, no footprints, no sign of anyone. "You sure it wasn't just some crank call?" he asked gently. "I thought that," I admitted. "But he described my clothes. He said my name." The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "We'll file a report. Keep your doors locked. If it happens again, call us right away." I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I moved my desk away from the window entirely, setting it up in the kitchen instead. I started keeping a baseball bat under the table. Every little creak in the building made my stomach twist. The strangest part? The calls never came again. Not once. I checked the logs obsessively. The company confirmed their system masked all customer numbers, making them untraceable. Whoever called me had slipped through without leaving a trail. And yet the question that haunts me most isn't how. It's why. Nobody should have known I was working from home. Ridgeway Supply had plenty of agents in physical call centers. My little apartment in Fairview wasn't on any official records, unless someone had already been watching me. To this day, I don't know who that man was or what he wanted, but sometimes late at night, when I hear a knock echo through the hallway, I feel that same ice in my veins, and I never ever work night shifts anymore. Story 3. I wasn't supposed to be working that summer. Honestly, I didn't even want a job. After finishing my first year of community college, I told myself I'd take a break. No classes, no assignments, no group projects with people I barely knew. Just a quiet few months to figure myself out. I'd been drifting for a while, undecided on a major, unsure of what I wanted in life. My parents were supportive, at least they tried to be, but my mom made it pretty clear she didn't want me spending the whole summer lying around. "You need to do something, Aaron," she had said one morning over breakfast, sliding her mug of coffee toward the edge of the table like it was already tiring her. "Anything. Work, volunteer, even part-time. Just something." My dad stayed out of it, as he usually did, buried behind the morning paper. That same week, my mom mentioned that her friend from church, Mrs. Langley, owned a small grocery store on the east side of town. Langley's Market. She said they were short-staffed and needed help with night shifts, just cleaning up, restocking, making sure the place was ready for the morning crew. "Easy work," my mom promised. "A couple of nights a week, and you'll have some money in your pocket." I was 19, broke, restless, and honestly, a little guilty about how much my parents were still covering for me. So against my better judgment, I agreed. That was how I ended up working nights at Langley's Market in Brookhaven, Ohio, a small city most people only knew because it sat right off the interstate. Not exactly glamorous, but it paid. Langley's wasn't big. 4 main aisles, a freezer section along the back, and a tiny produce area near the front. A couple of registers. The kind of place that smelled faintly of coffee grounds and floor cleaner, no matter what time of day it was. Mrs. Langley was a sweet older woman, maybe late 50s, with short hair and a voice that carried down the aisles whether you wanted it to or not. She ran the place during the day with 2 other employees. By 9 o'clock, when the store closed, everyone else was gone. That's when I came in. My shift was simple. Wipe down the counters and doors, sweep and mop the floors, restock shelves from the back room, double-check the freezers, lock up when I was done. Some nights I'd finish by 12:30, other nights closer to 2 in the morning. The hours didn't bother me. I'd always been a night owl anyway. The idea of quiet, empty aisles and music in my earbuds actually seemed nice. At least at first. It was hot that night. Brookhaven's summers were always muggy, but the air inside Langley's felt even heavier. The AC cut back after closing, Mrs. Langley's way of saving money, so I'd learned to bring a big water bottle with me. I clocked in, grabbed the laminated checklist from under the counter, and set my backpack down by the register. The lights overhead hummed faintly, some flickering like they couldn't decide whether to stay on. That was normal for the place. Everything started the same way. Broom, mop, rag, cleaner. The repetitive rhythm of cleaning actually calmed me. I was halfway down aisle 2, cereal and snacks, when I heard it. Footsteps. At first I froze. I thought maybe I'd left my music on, but no. I had pulled the earbuds out while mopping. The sound was distinct, slow, steady, coming from the far end of aisle 4. I told myself it was the building settling, or maybe Mrs. Langley had forgotten something and come back, but my stomach tightened anyway. "Hello?" I called out, trying to sound casual. "Store's closed." No answer. I waited a moment, then stepped around the corner. The aisle was empty, just rows of soup cans and boxes of pasta, neatly stacked. I almost laughed at myself. First week on the job and already spooking myself. But as I turned back toward my cart, I noticed something strange on the floor. A smudge. Not dirt, not a spill. Something faintly wet, like the outline of a shoe print. Just one. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. For the next hour, I worked faster than usual. Stocked shelves, checked expiration dates, anything to keep moving. Every time I thought about the footprint, my skin prickled. At one point, I caught myself whispering out loud, "You're fine. Nobody's here. Just finish and go home." It almost worked, until I heard it again. This time, the footsteps came from behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the box of paper towels in my hands. Nothing. Just empty aisles stretching out under the buzzing lights. "All right," I muttered louder than I meant to. "Whoever's here, you need to leave. I'm calling the cops if you don't." The words echoed weirdly in the quiet store. No answer. I gripped the flashlight from under the counter, the heavy metal kind that doubled as a weapon if you swung it hard enough. My heart was hammering as I started checking every aisle. Frozen section, dairy, back storage closet, even the bathroom. Empty. By then, I was sweating hard, not just from the heat. That's when I saw it again. Another footprint. Near aisle 4. Clearer this time, as if someone had stepped in water I couldn't see. I should have left. I know that now. But something in me, the part that didn't want to look weak, didn't want to tell my mom I'd quit another job, made me stay. I was in the storage room restocking paper towels when I heard it. A heavy step, right outside the door. I froze. Another step. Slowly I lifted the flashlight. My voice came out shaky, but I forced the words. "I don't know who you are, but this isn't funny. You need to leave." Silence. I pushed the door open with my shoulder. At the far end of the narrow hallway, by the exit door, a man was standing. Tall, thin, clothes hanging loose like they didn't fit him. His face shadowed, but his eyes, God, his eyes were fixed right on me. My stomach dropped. "You need to leave," I said again, louder this time. He didn't move, didn't speak. I took one step forward, and that's when he bolted. He turned and sprinted around the corner. Adrenaline surged through me. Without thinking, I chased after him. But when I rounded the corner, nothing. The front doors were still locked. No broken glass, no alarms, no open windows. He was gone. I searched everywhere. Every aisle, every corner of the back room. My hands shook so bad I almost dropped the flashlight. Finally, I noticed it. The door to a small storage closet, one we almost never used, was cracked open. My breath caught. I stepped closer, flashlight raised. The beam shook against the doorframe. With one hard shove, I yanked the door wide. Empty, just boxes and old plastic bins. Relief washed over me so hard I almost laughed. I pulled out my phone, ready to call the cops, when I heard a faint sound. Above me, I tilted the flashlight upward. There, in the crawl space above the closet, I saw the pale outline of a face. Someone was crouched up there, watching me. I stumbled backward, heart slamming, and bolted for the front door. By the time the police arrived, I was standing outside, drenched in sweat, clutching the store keys like a lifeline. It took them half an hour to search the place, and then they found him. A man, late 30s, dirty clothes, no ID. Muttering nonsense when they dragged him down from the crawl space. He'd been hiding there, waiting, watching. God knows for how long. They took him away in handcuffs. Mrs. Langley was shaken but surprisingly calm when I told her I was quitting. "You're not the first to see something like that here," she said quietly, which somehow made it worse. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made me jump. Sometimes I still hear it in my head, the sound of slow footsteps on linoleum. And sometimes I wonder, how long had he been there? Had he hidden during the day? Had he watched other people the way he watched me? But mostly, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't turned around in time. If I'd waited even a few more seconds, maybe you wouldn't be reading my story at all. Maybe you'd be reading about me on a missing poster instead. Story 4. I never thought my 20s would feel this aimless. Most of the people I graduated high school with had either gone off to college, started families, or at least figured out what they wanted out of life. Me? I was stuck drifting. I'm Aaron Blake, 24 years old, And at the time this happened, I was living in a forgotten little town called Graybrook, tucked off Route 17 in northern Indiana. Graybrook wasn't even on most maps anymore. It was one of those places people only pass through if they took the wrong turn. Rows of tired houses leaned against each other, paint peeling, porches sagging. The streets got quiet after dark, too quiet, like the whole town was holding its breath. My dad had bailed when I was 13. My mom stuck around, working 2 jobs until her back gave out. By the time I turned 20, I couldn't take her hovering anymore, so I found a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat on Main Street. Rent was cheap because the pipes rattled and the floor sloped like it was giving up. I didn't care. It was mine. I dropped out of community college after 3 semesters. Couldn't stand sitting in classrooms pretending to care about marketing or geology. After that, jobs came and went. Stocking shelves at the hardware store, delivering pizzas, even a short stint at the local car wash. None of them stuck. Then came the night shifts. Mr. Miller, the guy who owned Miller's Gas in Mart, was in his late 60s. Gray hair slicked back, thick glasses, always smelled faintly of pipe tobacco. His place was the only gas station within 10 miles, sitting at the edge of town where the road bent toward the woods. He hated staying up late, so he paid me $10 an hour, cash, to work overnight. Under the table, it wasn't glamorous. The station had 2 clunky pumps, a flickering "Open 24 hours" sign, and a tiny convenience store stocked with day-old coffee, cigarettes, and the kind of snacks you wouldn't feed a dog unless you were desperate. Still, it was steady money, and most nights were dead quiet. I didn't mind the silence, at least not at first. If you grew up in Graybrook, you heard stories about the woods. Always the woods. Kids whispered about people who went in and never came out, about strange lights that floated between the trees, about screams echoing through the fog at night. Adults pretended not to believe, but every single one locked their doors after sunset. Millers sat right at the tree line. On clear nights, the sky stretched open, glittering with stars. On foggy nights, Graybrook got a lot of those. You couldn't see past the edge of the lot, just white mist swallowing everything whole. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. I'd sweep the aisles, stock shelves, and nurse cups of bitter coffee. We didn't have Wi-Fi, and this was before I owned a smartphone worth anything, so my only company was a boxy TV bolted to the corner and an old radio that picked up more static than music. I'd tell myself the woods didn't bother me, but there were moments, especially around 2 or 3 in the morning, where I'd catch myself staring at the dark beyond the pumps, half expecting something to move. It was late October, the kind of night where the air feels heavy but not cold, like it's holding something back. Halloween was only a few days away. I remember that clearly because earlier in the shift, Mrs. Jensen from the bakery had dropped off a box of pumpkin muffins for me. She always said, "You're too skinny, Aaron. A boy your age needs to eat." By 1:15 a.m., the lot was empty, and I hadn't seen a car in hours. The radio buzzed with a country station that kept cutting in and out. I was slouched behind the counter, thumbing through a dog-eared copy of a hunting magazine someone left behind, when the bell above the door clanged. It wasn't an electronic chime. It was an old metal bell Mr. Miller rigged with a wire. Loud, sharp. No way it went off unless someone pushed the door open. I sat up straight, magazine sliding off my lap. The front door was shut. I frowned, leaned over the counter to peer through the glass. The lot was empty, pumps quiet, road empty. "Hello?" I called, my voice thin in the stillness. Nothing. A draft, I thought, but the door had a hydraulic hinge. It didn't swing open on its own. My stomach tightened. I grabbed the flashlight from under the register and stepped out from behind the counter. My sneakers squeaked faintly against the tile as I checked each aisle. No one. Bathrooms locked, as always. The place was empty. I was about to write it off as a fluke when something outside caught my eye. A figure, standing just past the farthest gas pump, half swallowed by mist. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks, but no. He was there. A man. Rigid posture, facing sideways toward the woods. Not toward me, not toward the road. Just listening. "Sir?" I called out through the glass, knocking on the door with my knuckles. The man didn't move. I squinted. He wore a dark canvas jacket, something heavy. His head was shaved, and this was the part that froze me. He had sunglasses on. At nearly 2 o'clock in the morning, my pulse picked up. Something primal, some gut-level alarm bell, started ringing in my chest. I should have stayed inside, should have locked the doors and called the sheriff, but boredom, nerves, and maybe stupidity pushed me forward. I grabbed the baseball bat Mr. Miller kept under the counter and cracked the door open. The air outside was damp, thick, carrying the smell of wet leaves. "Hey, you okay out here?" I asked, stepping onto the gravel. The man turned his head slightly, not enough to show his face, but enough to let me know he'd heard. His voice came out low, rough, like metal scraping wood. "I need $1,500. I froze mid-step. "What?" $1,500. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't even a request. It was like he was stating a fact, something inevitable. My grip tightened on the bat. "Look, man, nobody keeps that kind of money in the register. You should head out." He stepped closer. "I need it." The mist curled around his jacket, and for a second, I caught a glimpse of something metallic under the fabric. Not a gun, not a knife. Something else. I couldn't place it. "Back off," I warned, raising the bat. He grinned then, wide and wrong, teeth yellow under the buzzing overhead lights. I bolted. My boots crunched against gravel as I sprinted back, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I slammed the door, twisted the lock, and stumbled behind the counter. The bell clanged wildly as the man yanked on the handle. The glass rattled. "Get the hell out!" I shouted, grabbing the phone. My hands shook so bad I nearly dropped it. I dialed 911. The dispatcher's calm voice was a lifeline. "Graybrook Emergency Services. What's your location?" "Miller's Gas, out on Route 17. Some guy's trying to break in. He wants money. He keeps saying 1,500. "Stay on the line," she said. "Officers are on their way." The banging slowed, then stopped. Silence. I flicked on the floodlights outside. The lot lit up bright white, the mist glowing like milk. Empty. The man was gone. It felt like forever. But the sheriff's cruiser finally cut through the fog, headlights washing the pumps in light. Sheriff Dalton stepped out, a tall guy in his 50s, thick mustache, voice always calm. "You okay, Aaron?" he asked. I think so. But that guy, he was right there. He wanted $1,500. Said it like it was supposed to happen." Dalton's brow furrowed. "We've had reports. Folks being approached out here by strangers asking for money. Some kind of scam. Maybe. Drifters, but..." He trailed off, glancing at the mist. He searched the lot. No footprints, no tire marks, nothing. "Lock up. Stay inside the rest of your shift," he told me. "If anything else happens, call us." I nodded, though my hand still shook. He drove off. The red taillights vanished into the fog. The rest of the shift dragged like a nightmare. Every creak of the cooler fans, every crackle of static on the radio set me on edge. I kept staring at the door, waiting for the bell to clang again. It never did. But sometimes, on nights when the fog rolls thick across the lot and the radio hisses like it's carrying voices, I swear I hear that metallic clang of the doorbell. And I know he's still out there, waiting. Story 5. I never thought my mid-20s would look like that. Most people I grew up with in Lincoln, Nebraska, had moved on to steady jobs, relationships, or at least apartments they could actually afford. Me? I was drifting. 24 years old, broke and tired of hearing my dad's voice in my head every time I messed up. "You'll never stick to anything, Dylan. You'll quit before it gets hard." He wasn't wrong. I dropped out of community college after 2 semesters, tried working at a tire shop, lasted 4 months, went to Denver, got hired as a dishwasher in a busy bar, walked out on the 3rd night. I had this pattern where I'd tell myself things would be different, then as soon as the grind set in, I'd bail. That's how I ended up living out of my 2003 Ford Ranger with a broken passenger window taped up with a trash bag. By the fall of 2021, I was tired, not just of drifting, but of waking up in Walmart parking lots, of showering at truck stops, of pretending I was just between things when really I had nowhere to land. That's when I saw the Craigslist ad. It was late at night. I was sitting outside a laundromat in Rawlins, Wyoming, using their Wi-Fi, scrolling the gigs section. The post was short: overnight caretaker needed, Pine Hollow Inn, minimal duties, quiet place, good weekly pay, room provided, no phone number, just an email. Normally that would have set off alarms, but when your stomach's empty and your wallet has $6 left, alarms don't matter. I fired off a quick message. Name's Dylan. I'm available to start immediately. 15 minutes later, I got a reply. Be here by 7. Manager will explain. Address: Pine Hollow Inn, off Route 287 near Silver Ridge. Silver Ridge. I'd never heard of it, but Google Maps showed a tiny mountain town 3 hours north. I figured, hell, it's a bed, maybe a paycheck. That's more than I'd had in weeks. I rolled into Silver Ridge just before sunset. One main street with a gas station, a diner called Maples, and a post office the size of a garden shed. Everything else was just old clapboard houses and pine forest pressing right up against the edges of town. The inn was another 5 miles out, tucked back along a winding gravel road. A wooden sign stood at the turnoff. Pine Hollow Inn, established 1974. The paint was faded, half the letters peeling. The place looked wrong. Not falling apart exactly, but stuck, like it had been alive once but was only pretending now. 2 stories of dark timber, a porch that sagged a little, windows reflecting the last orange of daylight. A single pickup truck sat in the lot. Inside it smelled like damp carpet and lemon cleaner. The front desk was empty except for a little brass bell. I rang it and a man shuffled out from the back. He was tall, late 50s maybe, with long gray hair tied into a ponytail and a face that looked worn down more from life than age. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. "You're Dylan?" he asked, voice gravelly. "Yeah, you must be..." "Harvey," he cut in. "Manager, more or less. You'll be the new night guy, huh?" "Guess so." I tried to sound casual, but something about him made me uneasy. Harvey stuck out a dry, bony hand. His grip was weak, like he wasn't really present. He walked me through the basics. "We got 3 guests right now. Married couple upstairs, room 204, a trucker in 109, and some fella from Oregon in 112. They're all quiet. Your job's simple. Sit at the desk, answer the phone if it rings, make a walkthrough every couple hours. That's it." I asked about pay. "Cash, envelope at the end of the week," he said, eyes sliding away. That should have been my cue to bail, but I told myself a week of quiet nights and free food from the diner would give me a chance to reset. At 7 p.m., Harvey grabbed his coat. "I'll be back around 7 in the morning. Don't leave the property, all right?" He didn't say it like advice. He said it like an order. At first, it was easy. I sat behind the desk, flipping through an old magazine someone had left. The tiny TV on the shelf behind the counter was playing reruns of MASH. Around 9, the trucker from 109 came out for a smoke. Big guy, heavy boots, nodded at me but didn't say much. By midnight, though, the quiet got heavy. Not peaceful, dense. Like the air itself had weight. The whole building creaked and shifted, and sometimes I swore I heard footsteps on the second floor. Though when I checked, the hall was empty. At 1:37 a.m., the phone on the desk rang. I nearly jumped out of my chair. The sound was so sharp in that silence. I picked it up. "Front desk, Dylan speaking." Nothing. Just slow, steady breathing. "Hello?" For a moment it stayed like that. Then a whisper, faint and wet, like someone's mouth pressed too close to the receiver. "You shouldn't be here." I slammed the phone down so hard it rattled the counter. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I told myself it was a prank, some guest screwing with me. But deep down, I knew there was no one else out here for miles. I almost quit the next morning. When Harvey came in, sipping coffee like nothing happened, I asked him straight out, "Someone called last night, told me I shouldn't be here. Who was it?" He just shrugged. "Mountain plays tricks on folks. Don't think too much on it." Then he smiled without his eyes moving. "See you tonight." Against my better judgment, I stayed. That night, around 11:30, the power went out. Whole building snapped into blackness. No hum of the fridge, no TV, nothing. Just silence so complete it pressed against my ears. I grabbed the flashlight behind the desk. the beam cutting through the dark. That's when I heard it. Rex, the inn's old German shepherd, whimpering outside. I'd seen him lounging on the porch earlier, too lazy to lift his head. Now he was whining low, ears flat. I walked the halls. All the guest doors were shut tight, no voices, no movement. And then, at the far end of the second-floor hallway, I saw it. A figure, tall, shoulders hunched, standing just inside the emergency exit. I raised the flashlight. The beam caught its face. There wasn't one, just pale, waxy skin stretched smooth where eyes and a mouth should have been. The thing stepped backward into the stairwell and was gone. I ran so fast I nearly slipped down the stairs. Rex was waiting at the bottom, tail tucked between his legs. Then the phone rang again. I shouldn't have answered. "You can't leave now," the voice whispered. I dropped the receiver and bolted. I didn't even grab my duffel. I just jumped into the Ranger and tore down that gravel road, headlights bouncing off trees, heart slamming against my ribs. I didn't stop until I reached a lit gas station an hour south. I sat in the bathroom, shaking so hard I dropped my phone twice trying to call someone. The next day, Harvey left me a voicemail. His voice was sharp, angry. "You walked out. Abandoned the post. Your pay's forfeit. Don't bother coming back." 2 days later, I tried reporting it at the sheriff's office in Jackson County. A deputy listened, then drove out to check. He called me back that night. "Son, that inn's been closed 3 years. Place burned in 2018. Manager and 3 guests died. Whole wings condemned." I told him that wasn't possible. I'd been there. I'd met Harvey. I'd seen the guests. The deputy just said, "Records don't lie," and hung up. I don't know what I saw in Pine Hollow. I just know it was real. And some nights, when I'm driving empty roads, I swear I hear a phone ringing in the dark. Story 6. I never imagined I'd be back on night shifts. If you'd asked me a few years ago, I would have sworn I was done with them forever. Back then, I worked security at a distribution center in Kansas City. Long, silent nights, walking endless rows of warehouses, convincing myself every echo was just the wind. Those shifts left me worn down in ways I still can't fully explain. When I finally quit, I promised myself, never again. But promises don't pay rent. I'm 31 now. My name's Ethan Cole, and I live in Rockford, Illinois. It's not a bad city, not exactly small, not exactly big, just one of those in-between places where everything feels temporary. After my hours got slashed at the auto shop I'd been working at, I scrambled for something to keep myself afloat. That's how I ended up with this job. Night maintenance at Birchwood Financial Services, a mid-sized office building tucked at the edge of an industrial park. The pitch sounded easy enough. 4 hours a night, Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. to midnight. Good pay for the time. The deal was simple: empty trash bins, vacuum, restock bathrooms, wipe down desks, and lock up. I'd have the entire building to myself. When the supervisor, a man named Mark Delaney, hired me, he said, "It's the easiest money you'll ever make. Nobody bothers you. You just keep the place clean and leave." At the time, that sounded like exactly what I needed. I grew up in Decatur, about 2 hours south of Rockford. My parents still lived there in the same single-story house I was raised in. My younger brother, Caleb, stayed behind too. He's married now. 2 kids, works at the railroad yard. I was the one who left. I thought I'd carve out something bigger. Instead, it's been one dead-end job after another. Warehouse grunt, delivery driver, night stalker at Home Depot. A few years back, I moved to Rockford with a woman named Maya. We lasted 2 years before things crumbled. Money fights, my long hours, her frustration at living in a city she never liked. One evening I came home, and half her stuff was gone. She left a note that just said, "I can't do this anymore." Since then, it's been me, alone in a 1-bedroom apartment off East State Street, paying bills however I can. I don't mind being alone, not really. I've gotten used to it, but sometimes the silence feels heavier than it should. The first couple of weeks at Birchwood were fine, even comforting in their monotony. I'd pull into the empty lot, clock in at the touch screen by the glass doors, grab my big ring of keys and get to work. The building itself isn't huge. 3 floors, mostly office cubicles, 2 conference rooms, a break area on each level, and a basement storage floor. The hum of old fluorescent lights filled the air, broken up by the occasional click of the HVAC system. At night, with nobody around, it almost felt peaceful. Sometimes I'd even talk out loud just to hear a voice, saying things like, "All right, floor 2, let's see what disaster you've got tonight." It was stupid, but it kept me sane. I thought maybe, just maybe, this job would work out. Until last Thursday night. That evening, I was running late. There had been a wreck on East Riverside. Traffic backed up for half a mile. By the time I pulled into the empty parking lot, it was 8:12. The building stood dark except for the faint glow of the security lights. I swiped in, the screen chimed, and I started my rounds. Everything felt the same. Quiet, ordinary, boring in a way that I'd come to appreciate. Around 9:15, I was on the second floor wiping down a row of desks when I heard it. The phone at the front desk started ringing. Now that immediately struck me as wrong. No one should be calling the office that late. The place closed at 6. If employees needed something after hours, they emailed or texted. The phone rang 6 times before stopping. I exhaled, relieved. But less than a minute later, it rang again. Then again. By the third time, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Curiosity pulled me down the hallway toward the front reception area. The little green screen on the desk phone glowed, unknown caller. I hovered, hand above the receiver, before muttering, "Not my problem." I muted the ringer. For a while, that was that. By 10 p.m., I'd nearly forgotten about the phone. I was in the third floor break room, pouring a cup of stale coffee that tasted like wet cardboard, when I heard a sound from downstairs. Beep. Short, sharp, electronic. The kind of sound the glass doors made when someone scanned a key card. But I didn't have a key card. Maintenance staff used physical keys. Key cards were for daytime employees and management only. I froze. My cup rattled slightly in my hand. Then, thud. The sound of the glass door opening, then closing. My stomach turned. I set the coffee down and crept to the stairwell, leaning cautiously over the railing. "Hello?" My voice cracked more than I wanted it to. "Someone down there?" No answer. A second later, footsteps. Slow, steady, deliberate, coming from the lobby. "Jean?" I called, thinking maybe the security guard had come inside early. He usually patrolled the lot around midnight. The footsteps stopped. Silence. I swallowed hard, stepped back into the break room doorway and whispered, "This is not happening." When I leaned out again, I saw him. A tall figure stood at the base of the stairs, maybe 15 feet from me. Broad-shouldered, motionless. "Hey, office is closed. You can't be in here," I said, my voice trembling. No response. The figure took a slow step forward. That's when the overhead fluorescent flickered, catching something metallic in his hand. A knife. My chest went cold. I bolted back into the break room, easing the door shut behind me, hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Somehow I managed to dial 911. "911, what's your emergency?" A woman's calm voice answered. "There's someone in the building," I whispered. "He's got a knife." "What's your location, sir?" "Birchwood Financial Services, off Industrial Drive. I'm on the third floor break room." "Stay hidden, sir. Officers are on the way. Keep the line open." I crouched behind the vending machine, phone pressed tight to my ear. Downstairs, footsteps echoed. Slow, deliberate, then silence. Every few moments I thought I heard him stop, listening, like he knew I was there. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard the glass doors open again. A voice. "Rockford Police! Anyone inside?" I didn't wait. I burst from the break room, sprinted down the hall and flew down the stairs. An officer stood just inside the lobby, mid-40s, heavy-set, gun drawn. I stammered out what happened. He nodded, then swept the building top to bottom. No one. Not a trace. The next morning, Mark called me in. He looked pale, nervous. He slid a laptop across the desk. The security footage showed it clear as day. At 9:12 p.m., the glass door beeped open. The man stepped inside, tall, wearing dark clothes, a knife in his right hand. He didn't check rooms, didn't wander. He walked straight to the stairwell and stood there, waiting. When I called out, his posture shifted. He gripped the knife tighter. He stood there for 3 full minutes before slipping out the door. Seconds later, the patrol car pulled up. The scariest part? The key card he used wasn't registered. Management swore none were missing. Police checked ex-employees, delivery crews, even Gene the security guard. Nothing. It's like he just appeared. I still work there. Bills don't stop. Jobs don't fall out of the sky. But every night when I clock in, my gut tightens. I carry a flashlight now. I double-check every room. I never leave my phone more than an arm's reach away. Sometimes around 10 p.m., when I'm in that break room, I'll hear it. Beep, sharp, short. I tell myself it's nothing. I don't go check anymore. Because deep down, I know whoever he wasn't looking for money. He was looking for me. Story 7. I never thought I'd still be living in Ashford, Missouri at 19. When I was in high school, I used to tell myself I'd graduate, maybe head to Kansas City or, hell, even St. Louis if I got lucky. But life doesn't always bend the way you want it to. After my dad passed, things fell apart. He worked construction, union jobs when he could get them, odd jobs when he couldn't. A car accident took him out 2 winters ago. It wasn't anyone's fault, they said. A patch of black ice, a busted guardrail on Route 46, and a pickup that never made it home. Mom tried to hold us together for a while, but after she remarried, she moved down south with her new husband. Left me the trailer, left me the bills, left me the memories I never asked for. So I stayed. My name's Jacob, but everyone around here calls me Jake. I rent a rust-red trailer off County Road 9 for cheap. The roof leaks when it rains, the heater coughs more than it heats, and at night you can hear coyotes screaming out by the fields. Rent's low enough, though, and nobody bothers me much. I work nights at Millie's Diner, a 24-hour spot squatting just off Route 46, 10 miles south of Ashford. It's the kind of place that hasn't changed since the late 70s. Red vinyl booths, chrome trim dulled by decades of grease, and a jukebox in the corner that only works when it wants to. Most nights it's me out front, wiping counters, keeping the coffee hot, and Millie's nephew Todd in the back pretending to cook. Todd's 35, overweight, always chewing on a toothpick, and smokes out back more than he flips burgers. We get the same rotation of people most nights. Truckers hauling through, locals too drunk to make it home without a greasy breakfast, and the occasional family lost on their way to somewhere better. I've been working the graveyard shift 7 months now. It's lonely work, but I don't mind the quiet. At least, I didn't used to. That night started normal. It was a Wednesday, the kind of night where you could feel the cold seeping in under the door, even with the heaters blasting. I was behind the counter, stacking mugs fresh out of the dishwasher, when Todd hollered from the kitchen. "Jake, you fill the pie case yet?" "Yeah, 2 apple, 1 cherry," I called back. He poked his head through the pass-through window, a cigarette dangling from his lips. "Don't forget to swap the coffee. Last batch tasted like motor oil." "That's because you let it sit 3 hours. He smirked, went back to whatever he was doing. The usual banter. Around 10, Earl came in. He's a trucker, one of the regulars. Big guy, bald, always orders the same thing. 2 cheeseburgers, fries, and a slice of apple pie with his coffee. He's the closest thing I've got to a friend on this shift. "How's the night treating you, kid?" he asked as he slid into his booth. "Same as always," I said, grabbing a pot. "Dead quiet." "Quiet's good." He smiled, but his eyes looked tired. "Quiet means safe." I didn't think much of it then, just trucker talk. By midnight, the place was empty again. Todd was back outside smoking, and I was leaning on the counter, flipping through an old magazine someone left behind. The neon sign outside buzzed, casting red light across the parking lot. That's when I saw the headlights. At first, I thought it was just another rig pulling off the highway. But the car, if it was a car, didn't pull in. It sat across the 2-lane road, headlights pointed straight at the diner, engine running, high beams, blinding. I waited for it to turn, to either come in or keep going. It didn't. After a minute, I pushed through the front door, rubbing my arms against the cold. The air was sharp, sky clear, stars overhead like shards of glass. The engine across the road purred, but the car didn't move. "You lost?" I called out. No answer. The high beams burned into my eyes. I squinted, tried to make out the shape. It wasn't a truck. Looked like an old sedan, long body, maybe 70s. Hard to tell. I felt a chill and went back inside. Todd came in a minute later, smelling like smoke. "What are you gawking at out there?" "Car parked across the road." He shrugged. "Probably someone sleeping it off. Let him be." So I tried. Went back to the counter, poured another pot of coffee. Then the phone rang. We still use one of those old rotary wall phones. Bell so loud it rattles your teeth. I picked up. "Millie's open all night." Static. Then a low male voice, breathy, almost like a whisper. "Is it safe inside?" I froze. "Who is this?" No answer. Just that slow, heavy breathing. "Listen, if you're screwing around..." Click. The line went dead. My hand felt slick on the receiver. I put it back slowly. Todd raised an eyebrow. "Wrong number." Something like that. I didn't tell him what the voice had said. It sounded stupid even in my own head. About an hour later, the lights flickered. Just for a second, but enough that everything cut. The jukebox, the fridge, the buzzing sign outside. When it came back, Todd cursed. "Storm rolling in." I glanced out the window. Clear skies, not a cloud. That's when I saw him. Across the road, just at the edge of the woods, stood a figure. Tall, maybe 6 feet, shoulders squared. He didn't move, didn't wave, just stood there, half swallowed by the tree line. My chest went tight. I stepped back, bumped into a stool. Todd followed my eyes. "What the hell?" The man didn't move. Then the phone rang again. I grabbed it, hands shaking. "Hello?" That same breathy voice. "Don't let him in." My stomach dropped. "Who the hell is this?" Dead line. I wanted to tell Todd, wanted to spill everything, but the words stuck. Instead I said, "Prank call." Todd didn't look convinced. He went back to the kitchen muttering. I turned toward the window. The man was gone. I should have been relieved, but my pulse hammered harder. At 2 a.m., the back door rattled. Not a knock, a hard shake, like someone was testing the lock. Metal clanged against the frame. "Jake?" Todd's voice cracked. I grabbed the heavy flashlight we kept by the sink. The rattling stopped. Todd edged toward the door. "Probably raccoons." "Raccoons don't jiggle door handles." We stood there, frozen. Finally, Todd threw the deadbolt and yanked the door open a crack. "Who's out there?" he barked. Nothing. Just the empty lot, the dumpsters, the cold night. He slammed it shut, locked it twice. "Screw this. I'm calling the sheriff." But when he lifted the receiver, the line was dead. No dial tone. That's when we heard it. Tap, tap, tap. From the front window. Slow, deliberate. We turned. The man was there, face inches from the glass. Pale, sharp features like carved wood. Eyes empty, locked on me. Not Todd, not the diner me I couldn't breathe. Todd swore under his breath. "We're leaving." He grabbed my arm, pulled me toward the back. My legs felt like stone, but I followed. We burst out the back, sprinted to his old pickup. Gravel crunched as he fumbled the keys. I glanced over my shoulder, certain I'd see that face behind us, but the lot was empty. We drove fast, tires spitting rocks, headlights cutting through the dark. Neither of us spoke until the sheriff's station came into view. Inside, Sheriff Donnelly looked half asleep, papers stacked on his desk. Todd ranted, waving his arms about the guy at the diner. The phone calls. The window. The sheriff sighed. "I'll send a deputy." We stayed until dawn. When they finally checked Millie's, there was nothing. No footprints outside, no fingerprints on the glass, no car across the road. The security cameras? Static. All of them, except one. The counter cam, the one pointed at me. At 2:17 a.m., the feed goes fuzzy, then clear, and for 3 seconds you can see him, standing behind me just over my shoulder, staring into the lens. When the picture clears again, he's gone. They never explained it. Todd quit the next day. I tried to stick it out, but I lasted one more shift before I walked. Now when I drive Route 46 at night, I don't look toward Millie's. Don't look at the woods. Don't look at the shoulders of the road. Because sometimes, just sometimes, I see headlights waiting in the dark, and I remember that voice on the line. Don't let him in.